The silence begins. The galaxy was never truly quiet. Stars hummed with the voices of countless civilizations. Every day, fleets moved across the void, carrying trade, politics, and war with them. Messages pulsed through the networks of the stars, millions of voices rising and falling like waves. It was noise, endless and constant, the sound of life and power stretching across the galaxy. But then, one day, something strange happened. One voice went missing. It was not a small world, not a minor colony, not some forgotten outpost in the dust of the cosmos. It was Earth, the home of humanity, and all at once, it went silent. At first, no one cared. The Council of 12 Races sat in their chambers laughing at the thought. Humans are always dramatic, one alien chancellor said, his skin flashing bright colors of mockery. They play games, they shout too loud, and now they hide like children, the others agreed. To them, humanity was noisy, chaotic, unpredictable, but not truly dangerous. Yes, humans had fought wars. Yes, they had survived great disasters. But in the minds of the galaxy's rulers, they were still just one more species among many. The silence stretched on for days, then weeks. Still, no signal came from Earth. No broadcasts, no trade pings, no routine transmissions. Even their colonies stopped answering. Ships that once carried goods and people from human ports were gone. It was as if humanity had pulled back into the dark, sealing its doors and windows, waiting, watching, but saying nothing. Merchants grew nervous. They were used to the loud, bustling markets of human stations where laughter and arguments filled the halls. Now the docks stood empty, their lights dark. The traders whispered among themselves, "Where are the humans? Why are they silent? Did something happen on Earth?" The rumors began. Some claimed a great plague had struck, killing billions. Others said humanity had torn itself apart in civil war. But there were no bodies, no wrecks, no signs of fighting. Only silence, deep and heavy, the kind of silence that made even the boldest captains feel cold in their bones. One alien scout ship dared to fly close to Earth's orbit. What they found made them afraid. The planet was dark, its usual storm of transmissions gone. But the orbital defense stations still glowed, powered and ready. The scout's sensors detected movement in the shadows, fleets shifting like predators in the night. Not broken, not weak, but waiting. The scout fled before it was destroyed, carrying its report back to the council. When the council heard the news, the laughter stopped. One elder, older than most of the races present, leaned forward slowly. His voice was rough, but his words were sharp. "You fools," he whispered. "This is no accident, no weakness." He told them of stories long buried, stories of wars fought before the council rose to power, wars where humanity did not shout, but fought in silence, wars where their fleets moved without warning, striking faster and harder than anyone thought possible, and always, always it began with silence. Still, the younger leaders did not believe him. "They are bluffing," they said. "Silence is weakness, not strength." But even as they argued, reports poured in from every corner of the galaxy. Human outposts were gone, their citizens vanished, their stations abandoned. No wreckage, no signs of attack, just disappearance, as if they had all been called home. The galaxy began to feel uneasy, because deep down, every race understood something simple. Silence was not natural to humans. They were talkers, singers, fighters, builders, always filling space with sound, with life, with energy. If they were quiet now, it was not because they were broken. It was because they were preparing. A captain of a distant fleet spoke what many had begun to fear. When predators go silent, it means they are ready to strike. And at that moment, the galaxy finally began to listen. Not to the noise, not to the chatter, but to the silence that stretched across the stars. The silence of Earth. A silence that carried weight, heavier than warships, sharper than weapons. A silence that promised the galaxy nothing would ever be the same again. And so the first whispers of fear began to spread. Fear that the humans were not gone, not defeated, not weak, but waiting. And when they finally chose to speak again, it would not be with words. It would be with fire. the galaxy's unease. The silence of Earth spread like a shadow across the stars. At first, it was only the traders who worried, those who made their living carrying goods between human colonies and alien worlds. But soon, the worry touched governments, militaries, and even the common people. Because silence is not empty. Silence is heavy. Silence carries questions that no one wants to answer. The Galactic Council gathered again, but this time there was no laughter. Ambassadors and war leaders sat in their vast chamber of crystal and light, their voices echoing against the high walls. Reports were placed on the long table, one after another. Human colonies offline, mining worlds abandoned, trade hubs silent. The same words repeated again and again until the chamber felt cold. One chancellor, scales glittering under the light, hissed in frustration. "They cannot all vanish at once," he said. "Perhaps their technology failed," another offered weakly. But then a nervous aide entered, holding a new report. It was a recording from a patrol ship at the edge of human space. The council leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen. The patrol ship had followed a faint trail of human transport vessels. At first, the trail was normal, but then the ship stopped, broadcasting. Their lights dimmed, their engines running cold. The video showed them moving in perfect formation, silent as shadows. Hundreds of ships drifting like a wall of steel through the void. The patrol captain's voice cracked in the recording. They are not lost. They are not broken. They are marching." The chamber erupted into noise. Some shouted for war. Others begged for peace. Some demanded spies. Others spoke of treaties. But beneath it all was the same truth, the same fear. They could not shake. Humanity had chosen silence, not because of weakness, but because of purpose. In the streets of alien cities, whispers grew. Children asked their parents, "Where are the humans?" Merchants muttered as their profits vanished. Soldiers sharpened their weapons in nervous silence. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt small, because Earth, the planet they once mocked, was not speaking, and everyone could feel the weight of it. On a distant world, an alien historian spoke quietly to his students. He told them of the War of Ashes, a conflict so old most had forgotten it. A war where human fleets appeared from nothing, tearing through armadas 3 times their size. The humans had not been the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced, but they had been the most relentless, and always their wars began the same way. With silence, back in the council, fear began to fracture the unity of the races. The proud Jiran Empire announced it would close its borders. The merchant clans of Yatar pulled their fleets from trade lanes, and the warrior caste of the Drox began to arm their ancient dreadnoughts not against each other, but against the humans. Because no one wanted to be the first to face what was coming. Still, no message came from Earth. No broadcast, no demand, no warning. Only ships moving like ghosts in the dark. Some alien captains swore they saw human war banners painted on the sides of the ships, silent symbols that glowed in the void. Others said they saw nothing but shadows, and that was worse. Fear turned into arguments, arguments into panic. But deep down, every leader knew the truth. The galaxy had lived too long mocking humans, calling them loud, chaotic, wild. Now the silence of Earth showed what they had ignored. A species that could choose when to be loud and when to be quiet. And silence, chosen by humans, was far more dangerous than any roar. The elder from the last meeting spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "You are fools if you think this silence will fade," he said. "This is the calm before something greater, something we are not ready for." But his warning was drowned by the fear in the chamber, because no one wanted to admit what they all felt in their bones, that the galaxy was standing on the edge of something it could not control, and so the council ended with no decision, no plan, only fear. Each race retreating to its own world, its own fleet, its own desperate preparations, and above them all, in the silence of the stars, humanity moved unseen, unheard. The galaxy's unease had turned into dread, and the silence was only growing deeper. Whispers of the past. The galaxy was restless. Every station, every marketplace, every council chamber carried the same question. Why had Earth gone silent? The council gave no answers, the fleets offered no truth, and the rumors grew like fire in dry grass. Among the rumors were old stories, half forgotten, whispered by those who studied history. They spoke of a time before the council was strong, before the galaxy was ordered. A time of chaos, when wars burned across the stars, without end. And in those stories, humanity was always there. Not as the loud, chaotic traitors everyone remembered, but as something else. Something darker. Something the galaxy had tried to erase. An old archivist of the Varun people opened sealed records. He read about the War of Silence, a conflict no one dared to teach. In that war, the humans had been pushed to the edge of destruction. Entire fleets were lost, colonies burned, and yet, Earth did not fall. The record said the humans disappeared, just as they had now. They vanished from the trade lanes, from the networks, from the open stars, and when they returned, they brought with them weapons that had no equal. Whole empires collapsed in weeks, and when it ended, no one spoke of it again. Now, centuries later, the same pattern returned. The archivist whispered to his students, his eyes wide with fear. "History is repeating itself," he said. "The silence is not emptiness, it is warning." On distant worlds, alien children began to fear the dark. They drew pictures of human ships in their schools, silent and faceless. Parents hushed them, but even they could not escape the feeling that something ancient was moving again. A force that had slept, but not died. Merchants refused to travel near human space. Entire sectors became ghost zones, silent highways where no ships dared to fly. Those who did sometimes returned with stories. Stories of vast shapes drifting in the void, larger than any known warship. Hull markings covered, engines hidden, but power radiating from them like heat from a star. One captain swore he saw a fleet of ships move in unison, every light blacked out. "They didn't chase me," he whispered. "They didn't need to." The council tried to cover these stories, but truth spreads faster than lies. Even the strongest empires began to feel cracks. Soldiers asked their commanders, "What if the humans come here?" Commanders had no answers, only orders to strengthen defenses. But deep inside, every soldier knew the truth. Walls and shields mean nothing if the storm is already inside. The whispers of the past grew louder. The elder at the council spoke again. He had lived long enough to remember fragments of those hidden wars. His voice shook as he said, "They do not fight like us. They do not warn like us. When they are silent, they are building. When they are silent, they are preparing. And when they return, they do not come to argue, they come to end." Still, the young leaders mocked him. They told themselves the humans were reckless, too scattered, too weak to repeat history. But even as they spoke, the fear in their eyes betrayed them. They could not deny the old stories. They could not ignore the silence pressing heavier with each passing day. Some wondered if Earth had found something, a relic, a weapon, a forgotten secret buried deep in its soil. Others thought the humans had changed, united in a way no one had expected. But the truth was unknown, hidden behind the wall of silence, and that was the most terrifying part because silence holds power. It forces the mind to imagine the worst, and in the dark corners of the galaxy, every race began to imagine the same thing. That humanity was not only silent, they were waiting to remind the galaxy why they had once been feared, and why nothing would ever be the same again. The first strike. The silence stretched for months. By then the galaxy was drowning in fear and speculation, but fear without proof is still only fear. Many leaders told themselves the humans were bluffing, that the silence would break, that trade would return. They comforted themselves with lies, and then the first strike came. It happened at the border of the Drox Empire. A fleet of Drox warships patrolled their sector, armored and proud. They were trained to fight, bred for war, and they laughed at the idea of human silence. Their commander, a massive figure with burning eyes, declared to his crew, "Humans are cowards. They hide because they know they cannot face us." But as he spoke, his sensors detected movement. In the dark, at first it seemed like shadows. Then the shadows became shapes. Dozens of ships sliding out of the void, silent, their hulls dark. No signal, no warning, no voice, only silence. The Drox commander ordered weapons ready, his fleet bristling with firepower. He shouted into the void, "Identify yourselves," but no answer came. Instead, the human fleet moved with terrifying precision. Their ships opened fire all at once, a storm of energy tearing across the stars. The Drox ships tried to respond, but they were too slow. The humans struck with speed no one had seen before. One Drox battleship exploded in a single flash. Another was cut apart by beams so sharp they split shields like paper. The commander roared in fury, but fury could not stop what was already happening. The humans were not just attacking, they were dismantling the fleet, piece by piece, ship by ship. Without speaking a single word, the battle lasted minutes, not hours. When it ended, the Drox fleet was gone. All that remained were wrecks drifting in silence, their fires fading into the void, and the human ships, as if nothing had happened, turned and vanished again into the dark. No victory cry, no broadcast, no demand, only silence. The report reached the council within days. At first, some claimed it was false, an exaggeration, a lie. But soon, more reports followed: border fleets destroyed, outposts dismantled, patrols erased, always the same pattern. No message, no warning, no negotiation, only silence before the storm and silence after the fire. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. "What do they want?" one ambassador shouted. "Why will they not speak?" another cried. But no one had an answer, because humanity had chosen a kind of war the galaxy did not understand. A war where words meant nothing, where silence itself became the sharpest weapon. For the first time in generations, the mighty Drox warriors fell quiet. Their empire trembled. Other races began to retreat, pulling fleets back from human borders, because if the humans could destroy the Drox with such ease, who would stand? Against them, the whispers of the past were no longer whispers. They became screams in every hall of power. "This is how it begins," the elder said, his voice echoing in the council chamber. "They strike without speaking, they vanish without warning, and when they return, they are stronger still." The galaxy realized something horrifying. The silence was not simply a shield, not simply a preparation. It was the beginning of a campaign unlike any other. A war where humanity gave no time for bargains, no chance for mercy. A war where their first strike was not the end, but only the beginning. And in that moment, the galaxy knew. The silence of Earth was no longer just unsettling. It was deadly, and the storm it carried had only just begun. Panic in the stars. The destruction of the Drox fleet spread across the galaxy faster than light. Whispers became panic, panic became fear, and fear grew into chaos. In marketplaces, traders shouted in alarm, refusing to sail anywhere near human space. In schools, alien children drew pictures of burning fleets and silent ships, their teachers unable to calm them. In the halls of power, leaders shouted over each other, their voices trembling with the same question: who will be next? The Drox Empire, once proud and feared, went quiet. Their warlords who once boasted of crushing humans now spoke in whispers. Whole battalions refused to leave their bases, and for the first time in centuries, the Drox warriors admitted what they had never said before. They were afraid. Other empires tried to act strong, but cracks were everywhere. The Jiran fleets retreated behind their borders, posting sentries at every star. The merchant clans abandoned, entire sectors calling them cursed zones. Even the Yitar trade guilds, who cared for nothing but profit, stopped sending ships because no gold was worth facing the silence of Earth. Meanwhile, reports continued. Human ships were seen drifting through the dark, entire fleets with no lights, no signals, no sound. Some alien captains swore they saw the old banners of Earth painted across their hulls, marks from forgotten wars. Others said they saw nothing at all, only shadows that moved like hunters. And every time, the sightings ended the same way. The human fleets vanished, leaving only fear behind. Civilizations began to turn on each other. The council chamber, once a place of order, was now filled with chaos. Ambassadors shouted, accusing rivals of hiding secret deals with humans. Some empires demanded unity, Others demanded war, others begged for peace. But there was no answer, because Earth sent no words, no diplomats, no messages, only silence. And silence was worse than war. At least in war you knew your enemy, you saw their weapons, you heard their threats. But the silence forced every race to imagine the worst. What weapons had the humans built? What power did they hide? How many fleets were moving in the dark, unseen, unstoppable? On a small moon near the edge of Council space, a scientist delivered her findings. She had traced the movements of the human fleets and noticed a pattern. "They are not random," she whispered to her colleagues. "They are moving with purpose, like pieces on a board." Her words spread quickly. If the humans were playing a game, it was not a game of survival. It was a game of domination. Fear bled into daily life. Citizens stocked supplies, convinced the humans would strike their worlds next. Some prayed, some rioted, some fled to remote colonies hoping to be forgotten. The galaxy had not seen such fear in centuries, and it all came from silence. The elder of the council stood once more, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You do not understand," he said. "Their silence is not emptiness. It is strategy. It is focus. It is the sound of preparation." But his warning was drowned out by shouts of panic because no one wanted to believe what they already knew. The storm was not ending. It was building. Across the stars, fleets gathered, defenses were raised, and alliances were tested. But even the strongest walls felt fragile when faced with the unknown. Every race waited in terror for the next strike. And in the silence between the stars, humanity moved like shadows, unseen and unstoppable. Their silence was no longer just fear. It was control. And the galaxy was already breaking under its weight. The revelation: the galaxy could not sleep. Worlds that once sang with music and laughter now trembled in quiet fear. Every screen, every broadcast carried the same questions. Where were the humans? Why had they gone silent? And what were they building in the dark? The council demanded answers. Spies were sent. Scouts were dispatched. Fleets were ordered to patrol near human borders, but none returned. Some vanished without a trace. Others sent fragments of broken transmissions. Whispers of vast machines hidden in the void. Engines the size of cities. Weapons powered by suns. And then only static. For a time, leaders thought these were exaggerations. The frightened tales of captains facing shadows. But then came the survivor. One ship returned from the edge of human space. Its hull was scarred, its crew pale with terror. The captain, a veteran of 100 battles, could barely speak. His voice shook as he told his story. "We saw them," he whispered. "The old war machines, the ones the legends spoke of." He described colossal ships, larger than any dreadnought, silent giants that drifted with purpose, weapons older than the council itself, glowing with power beyond reason. And around them, smaller fleets moved in perfect formation, not chaotic, not scattered, but united in silence. The chamber froze at his words. Even the proudest leaders sat in silence, their arrogance shattered, because if the humans had awakened the weapons of their past, then nothing could stop them. The captain's final words carried across the chamber like thunder. "They are not silent because they are weak. They are silent because they are ready. And when they speak again, it will be through fire." The truth spread quickly. The silence was not collapse, it was not defeat, it was not weakness, it was preparation. Earth had called its children home, uniting every colony, every fleet, every soldier. The chatter of trade and politics had been replaced with the order of war, while the galaxy panicked and argued the humans had been building an army that belonged not to one world but to all of humanity. Across alien worlds, despair began to grow. If the silence had been a warning, then the revelation was clear. Humanity was no longer playing by the rules of the Council. They had chosen their own path, and it was a path of war. On one distant planet, a scholar spoke to his students. "History does not repeat," he said. "It remembers." The humans had remembered their old strength, their old unity, their old weapons. And now the galaxy would remember too, The council tried to form plans, desperate strategies to resist. But every plan fell apart. Because how do you fight an enemy you cannot hear? How do you resist a storm that has not yet struck? The galaxy realized it was no longer in control. Humanity was. And in the deep silence of the stars, the humans waited. They did not shout, they did not demand, they did not threaten, they simply prepared. Their silence had become the most terrifying voice in the galaxy. And now everyone knew the truth. When Earth finally chose to break that silence, the galaxy itself would change forever. Nothing will ever be the same. The galaxy waited in silence. Every world, every empire, every fleet held its breath. The revelation had spread. Humanity was not gone. They were not weak. They were not broken. They had been preparing. And now, the question burned brighter than any star. What would happen when Earth finally chose to act? It began quietly, as all things human now seemed to begin. On the rim of council space, a message appeared, not a long speech, not a declaration, not a threat, just a single transmission. It lasted 3 words: "We are ready." The galaxy froze. No one dared speak, no one dared move. And then the stars themselves seemed to shift. Human fleets emerged from the dark, colossal warships leading countless others. The silent armada stretched across the void like a wall of steel and fire. They did not speak again. They did not explain. They simply advanced. The council scrambled. Some begged for peace. Others cried for war. But none dared to face the humans directly. Even the strongest empires turned inward, pulling back their fleets, fortifying their worlds. But in their hearts, they knew the truth. Walls could not protect them, shields could not stop them. Because humanity was not fighting for survival. They were fighting to remind the galaxy who they truly were. On alien worlds, fear turned to awe. Citizens watched the skies and whispered, "Perhaps this is how it must be." Because deep down, even those who feared the humans understood something. There was power in silence, and the humans had mastered it. The elder of the council rose one final time, his voice breaking as he spoke. "We mocked them for their noise. We laughed at their chaos. We treated them as less. But now their silence has undone us." He bowed his head, his words heavy with truth. Nothing will ever be the same. And he was right. The galaxy had changed. The old balance of power was gone. The old arrogance shattered. Every race now looked at Earth not with scorn, not with mockery, but with respect born of fear, because silence had spoken louder than any weapon. Silence had carried the promise of fire, and humanity had delivered that promise without a single wasted word. From that day forward, the galaxy would never again laugh at Earth, never again call them weak, never again call them loud or foolish, because silence had proven what words never could. Humanity was not just another species in the stars. They were the storm that silence carried, the fire that silence promised, the shadow that silence hid, and in that silence the galaxy finally understood. Earth had changed them all, and nothing would ever be the same again.